Hello, and welcome to the inaugural video of my new channel, Flat Smack, which is dedicated to putting the smack down on flat earthers. I couldn't think of a better way to start than with the video that I have for you today. In today's video, I'm going to expose a flat earth PhD fraud and show you why, if you're going to fake being a PhD, at least be more thorough with your science. So stick around.
Okay guys, for about 2 years I've been watching flat earth videos and trolling flat earthers on Facebook and other places. And all of that time there was always one thing that I could be certain of, and that was that there were never any actual scientists who believed in the flat earth garbage. Until one night a couple of weeks ago, I was in a Facebook Messenger debate with a flat earther named Eric. I mentioned to Eric how there never seemed to be any actual scientists who believed in the flat earth. That's when he sent me a link to a flat earth channel made by someone calling themselves Dr. John Dee, PhD. Well, I thought there it was, an actual PhD who believed the earth was flat. For about a half a second, I was stunned. But you know what? Then I realized something. The earth is a sphere, and there is no way in hell that an actual PhD in any real science could believe otherwise. So that started me looking. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it did not take me long to figure out that this alleged PhD was nothing of the sort. The first thing I found suspicious was the About section of his YouTube channel. It was suspiciously devoid of any mention of his educational pedigree. So I decided to email him and ask him to explain how this photo of a mountain casting a shadow on the bottom of a cloud could be possible on a flat earth. While I was at it, I thought I might as well ask him what his PhD was in and what his last name was. Since I was providing my last name, I thought it was only appropriate to know his. I wish I could say that his reply was surprising. However, it wasn't. First, he tells me that he is in fact a PhD, but then he brushes past that by saying that it was not as important as getting to the truth. Then, instead of answering any of my questions about that cloud, he tries to shift the burden of proof onto me by asking me to provide evidence that the earth is a globe. Okay, now I know two things that I was trying to find out. I know this guy is actually claiming to be a PhD, and I know for certain now that he is not. Why would a guy with a scientific PhD need to ask a complete stranger to provide proof that the earth is a globe? Why? Okay, so then he went on to tell me how hard it was for him to accept the truth that the earth was not a globe, and then he tells me that he is, quote, highly educated. He then sends me a link to his YouTube channel and encourages me to do the same experiments that he did. Okay, now that I know he's claiming to be a PhD but really isn't, my efforts to expose him can begin. First, I need to know what he's claiming to have a PhD in, and then I found my answer. In the very first video of his that I watched, he claims to have a PhD in spectrophotometry. Then he lists his academic pedigree in the same video. Now the hunt was on. So how can I find out if this guy has a PhD in what he says he does? First, let me see if I can find out which schools offer this PhD. Search, search, search. To no one's surprise, it seemed that not only were there no schools offering this PhD, but there were no schools that offered any degree of any kind in spectrophotometry. In fact, my search indicated that spectrophotometry was simply a part of other bachelor, master, and PhD programs like chemical engineering and astrophysics. Still, I wanted to be 100% sure that I'd not missed anything. And then I realized it. When a PhD applicant submits their thesis, that thesis is published online. And I've looked up and read several of my friends' theses who have PhDs. So I searched and I searched and I searched, and I found exactly 0 PhD theses papers from any student attempting to get a PhD in spectrophotometry. Conclusion: Dr. John Dee is an abhorrent fraud. So my next step was to call him out on his lie, and then also to point out all the mistakes that he made when he made the video that I was watching to prove that the earth was flat. And there were all kinds of mistakes. So I didn't beat around the bush. Here's the opening line from that email. Once he'd been called out, his next reply was exactly what I suspected from a flat earther. Instead of addressing the claims that I made or answering any of my questions or even answering my claim that he's a fraud, he pulled the classic flat earth trick. He started naming fallacies. I had seen this many times from watching debates with idiots like Nathan Oakley and Nathan Thompson against much smarter men like Simon Dan, Fight the Flat Earth, McToons, Conspiracy Cats, and Team Skeptic, and others, just to name a few. So I felt pretty honored when I received the exact same treatment. Yes, instead of addressing any of my points, I was met with lines like this. So now that we've determined that Airfinger's quote, Dr. John Dee is a liar, let's have a look at one of his videos. In this video, he's going to attempt to prove that the light from the Needles Lighthouse should not be visible from 26.5 kilometers away at Swanage Beach, if in fact the Earth is a sphere. He lists his motivation for doing so as follows. He goes on to list his academic pedigree, as stated before. Here's a reminder. Then he gives the location from where he's going to be making his observation of the lighthouse. And here it is. Now, he states that the observation height is 7.5 meters above sea level. Okay. You can ignore the misspelling of the word meter. That's actually the British variant of the spelling. So if you're an American, it's perfectly normal. So just remember that number, that 7.5 meters, because that number is going to be important later. And you'll know why when he goes to make his calculations. So he goes on to talk about the weather, and he gives great details about the tides. The next part is almost too funny, but I had to put it in. He starts showing us a lot of info about the tides and mean sea level, and I couldn't understand why. He shows us this picture, then this picture, and then this picture. And then this slide lets me in on his thinking, and I was floored. Remember, he's making his observation from land and to a lighthouse that is on land. But notice that he's showing us an elevation of the lighthouse, quote, at present tide levels. So he somehow thinks that the tides will change the altitude of either the lighthouse or the position from which he is viewing the lighthouse. So I don't know if he somehow thinks that the tides will lift the island up or lower the island down that the lighthouse is sitting on, or that his observation point is sitting on. I thought maybe he was giving us this for informational purpose, but alas, no. Here are the measurements that he places in the curve calculator. Notice that he puts the viewer height at 5.3 meters. So in his mind, the tide has somehow affected the height at which he's viewing. Because if you recall, he earlier stated that the viewing height was 7.5 meters. So that's a difference of 2.15 meters, or just over 7 feet. That is a rather significant difference. So what is even more remarkable is the fact that he believes that the change in sea level somehow changes his viewing height. Anyway, based on his calculations, 26.12 meters of lighthouse should be hidden. And then he surmises that therefore we should not be able to see the light from that distance if the Earth is indeed curved. Okay, so now let's look at the photo he took of the lighthouse at around 2100 hours.
Okay, here we go. I took a screenshot of the daytime photograph of the lighthouse. One of the just one of the photos he took. The first thing I want you to notice, he wants us to believe that the entire lighthouse is visible and that we're only seeing the light shining at the bottom because of some kind of refraction. So basically the whole lighthouse is here. We just can't see it, and we're seeing the light down here near the horizon simply because of refraction. Now, that's a lie. First of all, this mountain behind it is mostly white. That works out in our favor because of that, even though it's like not at night when he took the picture, I think it was around 21:15, he said, we can still see the outline of the top of the lighthouse right here. He wants us to believe this is the entire lighthouse. It's not. In fact, let me show you what you're looking at. That's the lighthouse. That is the full lighthouse. And you will notice that the majority of the lighthouse is hidden by the curve of the Earth. There's the light. There's the lighthouse there, the top part of it to scale. 31 meters total, 24 meters from the light. So I believe this proves fairly conclusively that the Earth is a sphere.
All right, I'm not going to continue to bore you with this. I'm just going to tell you that his conclusion is that the Earth is flat, and the reason we see the lighthouse or the light of the lighthouse so low is because of refraction. I'm going to include several of his slides regarding refraction in this video now. You can pause the video and read them, or you can go ahead and go to his video and watch the whole thing. I'll leave a link in the description. Anyway, just check out these slides and you'll see that he's basically making up his own science to meet his idea of what the Earth looks like. This seems to be a pretty clear case of confirmation bias. An actual PhD would have come up with a theory like, the Earth is flat, and then gone out and tried to prove that that theory was wrong. This fake PhD went out with a theory that the Earth was flat, and he was determined to prove it. This set him up to fall victim to confirmation bias, and boy, does he fall hard. In his attempt to prove that the Earth is flat, he makes all kinds of assumptions about how the light is bending and behaving, and he tries to obfuscate the fact that the bottom 2/3 of the lighthouse is hidden. The fact of the matter is that he made his conclusion before he left his house, and then he set out to prove it come hell or high water, even if he had to make his island sink due to low tide. That's it for me, folks. I appreciate you sticking around to the end of this, and I hope to be making more of these videos, and I'm actually going to be spending the next few videos on Dr. John Dee. So keep checking back in, and I'll talk to you then.